wonderful. Oh, it's perfect.
And we got the zebras.
Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful. I gotta find it now.
I'm Jan Brett, and I've just come back from a game drive in this beautiful place. It's the Serengeti, which is part of Tanzania, a country in Africa. The Serengeti is a beautiful park that is a reserve where wild animals roam, and there you see many birds. And when I say game drive, it means getting in a Land Rover with a guide and driving and looking at all the mammals and the birds that we find that day. And we have seen lions and giraffe, zebra, many antelopes, and some of the birds are absolutely gorgeous. And I've chosen one, the white stork, to draw for you today. Well, I brought my watercolors and my pencils, and I have my bird book right here so that I could draw the white stork for you. Before you start drawing, I want to explain to you that I'm going to be drawing this with a few simple shapes. I'm going to use a circle, a post-like shape or a column, rectangle turned on its side, and that will make up the stork. But in order to make it fit on the page, look at your piece of paper and find the center of the page. This is where I'm going to center my rectangle, which is the main body of the stork. And this rectangle is not going to be along the horizon line, it's going to be tipped a little bit. So I'm just going to do it lightly at first, and then I'll fill it in with a little bit of a darker line. And because I'm going to be just like you, I'm going to be just kind of adjusting things as I go along. So now I'm going to make this a little bit darker so the camera picks up on it. And then I'll be erasing parts of this and adding to it as I go along. But there's your rectangle, and you can see it's tipped a little bit. That's the way the stork's body is positioned, and I'm drawing him from the side, I should say. I try to use the easiest pose for you. And this is the thing I saw about 100 times a day, the stork from the side as we looked at it from our Land Rover. And then if you look at this top corner, that's where I'm going to start it's like a post or a column, just a thin up and down shape, and that's where his neck. And then on top of that shape, and a little bit forward, I'm going to draw a circle that will be the stork's head. And you can see it's quite a small circle. Birds have pretty small heads, and let's see, we don't really need those little lines there. And then I'll darken those, and just so that the camera can see those. And then there's the circle. So look at the circle, it's quite a bit smaller than his body. His beak is about the same distance as from the bottom of his head to his body. So I take that and go, let's see, I make a little mark right there. And right in the center, I'm just bringing my pencil along because that's halfway. And I'll bring that line out to about where that dot is. And the beak is actually a triangle, so I'm going to make it thin at the tip of the beak and then go up like this. And when he opens his beak, that's his mouth, of course. It's right there, right in the center. And this goes a little bit more forward like that. And I think I'll work on his legs just so you get an idea where everything is. I would go about, here's halfway, a little bit forward of that to make the first leg, and his leg just goes straight down, and it's about the same length as his neck. So we'll work on this a little bit more. This just gives us the idea, a double line going down for his foot. Now we have an impression of a bird already, but we need to, we want this to look like the white stork. So there's a few little adjustments I'm going to make, and this is kind of the fun part because you'll see it looks like a real character of a bird. And this is a very graceful bird. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to shape this column and make it go out a little bit like this, then it can join the line I already drew. And then here, this is going to be quite a bit different. I'm going to go down, go down, go down, and then I'm going to go out quite a bit, and I'm going to cut off the corner of that triangle. So this will be, now if this will be very graceful looking bird, hopefully, when I'm done, because he has that, almost looks like a curve there. And now as far as the beak goes, this is called the gape, where his mouth goes back into his head, and I'm going to make a kind of a little line going out to that tip of that gape and then back out again. So there's feathers here and feathers there, and then that opens up, and then of course he'd have his mouth, he can open his mouth really widely, but he's just going to be standing there with his mouth closed for this picture. And the storks have different shaped beaks, but this one is a very simple, straightforward beak. It doesn't go up and it doesn't go down. And then halfway on, this is the top part of his beak or bill, and I'm just going to make a little line right there. He has kind of a crease in that beak, and that's where his nostril is, right there. And then he'll have a pupil in his eye, and I'm going to leave a little white spot there. I'm going to be coloring this in with watercolors because, to show that it's kind of has a sparkle in his eye. The light is reflecting. And this part of his neck and head is all white, and his bill is bright red. Very, very pretty. So now this will come down, and the surprising thing is his wing. Let's see, I think I'll start it about here. This is where the shoulder of his wing is, and it doesn't go all the way to the bottom. This is where, well, that would be called, it's like his tummy, and it goes past there, and then it kind of comes down like this, his wing, and then up here. It doesn't go all the way to the top, though. It goes to about right there, and then his back comes down and joins that wing, and you don't see his tail. This wing is going to be mostly black, but his tail is white and it's covered up. In flight, you would see that white tail. And then they have little pants, so I'm just going to make where the feathers come down at the beginning of his long, long leg. And if you take this leg from here, this is where his foot begins. Maybe I'll draw that next. He's got 3 toes in front, and they are not webbed like a duck's. He has a toenail at the end of each one. I'm going to make these toes a lot longer because he has to balance on those feet when he's walking through the tall grasses of the Serengeti, or when he's in Europe and he's on the rooftop making his nest. And then he has 1 toe back here to balance. Okay, so now here's this leg. I'm going to divide it by thirds. And then here's the half, and right between the third and the half, he's got a big joint in his leg where it bends. And you can just make a little circle there, and that shows you where that bend in his leg is. And I think I made it a little bit larger down where it joins his foot and that toe, because it's, you know, quite a strong leg. And the other one, you can't really see the little pants part because it's behind that wing, but he will have this one bent a little bit, and this way you'll be able to see that nice joint where he bends his leg. And it goes in back of the other one, and his toes are very gracefully relaxed as maybe he's just standing there looking for something to eat. Maybe he's looking for his friends. I've got 1 toe behind the other, and then this little back toe is relaxed and pointed downward. And now I'm going to, this is just going to disappear. I'm going to erase this out because we don't really need that anymore, that we've got the shape. Same within the front. And we'll even erase right here on his neck and so forth, so that we can get a more realistic view of this bird. And he's a white and black bird. There's so many creatures on the plains today that were black and white. There were zebras, and then there's 2 kinds of storks that were black and white, and they look very pretty against the green grass. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line, here's the shoulder, come down a little bit of the way, And I'm just going to make this pretty shape like this. And this part here is going to be black. And what I'm going to do is show you these shorter feathers that I'm going to draw in. And I'm going to use a very, very dark gray, and then I'll use black as well, so you can get an idea of where the feathers are and the shininess of them. And then here are some of the wing primaries, which are the flight feathers. And those are all folded up nicely in his wing until it's time to fly. And then underneath that is his tail, and then the back comes down like this, and then this is where the black feathers start in the back. So he's starting to look like he's almost being ready for me to paint him. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on my shading first on the white parts. And I've mixed up a little bit of blue and brown, which I mixed together, and that should make a nice gray. I'm just putting a lot of water in it so it won't be too dark. And you can just go all around the edge with this light gray color, and it will hopefully create a more roundish look to this bird. And I'm just smushing it with a little bit of water and blending it so that that line won't look so harsh. Because the further to the edge I'm getting on, the darker it's going to be. So I'm making a little bit more of that gray here and down here, and it gets interesting at the bulge of his breast, but this would be a good place to erase because I want that line there. His feathers get a little longish there, and so I'm just going to show that they're a little longer by making these sweeping strokes like that. You could just copy that ruffling up of the feathers to show that these are longer, and then all the feathers around his head are quite short, and they look very smooth, and you don't even see the individual feathers when you're looking at the bird unless you're very, very close. I certainly couldn't see them from our Land Rover. And then I've got a little bit of shading around his eye, and let's see what other details I can put. I think there's a little shadow here as well where his head joins his neck, because his head is more roundish and then his neck is more of a column. And perhaps I'll put a little bit of shading in his eye. And while I'm at it, I'll just make that black pupil, because I'm going to make he has a dark eye. It's like a dark brown. And let's see, let's get a little bit more of that light gray, and I'll make a shadow under his wing. It's so wonderful to be out in this beautiful place, because every once in a while I'll see some movement out, maybe a quarter of a mile from me or even closer. Right now I just caught my eye with some ostriches, and a flock of ostriches walking by. There's about 10 of them. And that's a very huge, interesting flightless bird that lives here. They lay their giant eggs, and you see them running across the Serengeti. And so I think I'm done with the gray part. Well, the gray, it's the white part, but the gray that is shading the white part. And I'll take out that little line right there. And I'll make some brown. I have some brown here in my watercolors. That's a little bit too orangey, so I'll add a little bit of black to it. And do his eye. And I already did a little shadow, so it will look a little bit like it's shiny and round. And then I think next we'll try the black. And I tried to mix a lot of paint here because it's a big part of the wing is black. Very striking. But I'm going to start with dark gray, so then I can use a little bit of black later on to shade it. So here we go. And this will, while I'm filling in this black, I'll tell you more about this bird, which is that they, sometimes you see them in large numbers just in a thermal of which is when the earth is heated, the air rises, and the birds use this as like an elevator to get up higher in the sky if they want to go someplace, especially if they're traveling long distances like to Europe, which is a whole continent away. So you'll see many, many birds just circling in the air, and off they go to the new place once they go up in the thermal. And that's what we saw some of that today. And they have their friends, or I guess friends would be too strong a word, but there's other birds that they are often seen with, different storks. And we saw some of the other storks today. With them, there's one that's almost all purplishly black, purpley black. That was a very pretty one. But in the olden days, they used to kind of have a story about how storks bring babies, newborn babies. And this is the exact stork that they always picture in the old-fashioned books about the stork bringing the baby. Now I'm going to outline these feathers. And it almost looks like scalloping, as if you're, you couldn't think of a better design to put on this bird just for pure decorative looking lovely than this pattern of black and white on this bird. And getting a little bit more blue in there. And then I'll do the same thing with its wing primary flight feathers. And there's a little shadow under each one. And they're quite glossy. And I would say showing the iridescence and glossiness of birds is probably one of the most difficult things I do when I'm drawing. Because I do love birds, and the way the light hits a healthy bird is just something to see. It's so glossy. And right under this back, feather, they have a preen gland. And it looks almost like a little funny feather, but it's not. It's the preen gland. And out of it comes like a substance that is almost like hair conditioner. And they will take their bill, and they'll get a little bit of that oil on their bill, and then they'll put a little bit on all their feathers when they preen. And I am pretty sure most birds do that. I could almost say all, but I'm not really sure. But I know that my chickens do it, and it keeps their feathers all nice and glossy. And you can tell a healthy bird because their feathers will be very glossy because they have lots of energy to preen. And this is the back, those little feathers on the back that create this pattern. And as now I'm thinking about it, I think I am missing something, which is I want to show the shoulder. And so I'm going to use a little bit of that gray to make a shadow there so it looks a little bit rounded. It was looking a little bit flat to me, and then right here too. And same with right here where the wing joins the body. And then these feathers you probably could see from a little bit of a distance away. Let me see here. I think there's another row of these smaller feathers. You're a handsome little stork, you. And now this is going to be fun for you because you get to use a really bright color, which is red, and it's a bright, bright red that these beaks are colored with. And if you had to choose between a purplish red and an orangey red, choose the orangey red. If you're working with colored pencils, or if you're working with markers, or you're working with watercolors, this red, it's actually called cadmium red, but it has a lot of orange in it. And I'm going to do the legs. And there's another stork that lives in Africa that has yellow legs. And another one of the storks that is pretty neat that I've seen is called the woolly neck stork. And the feathers on its neck are much fluffier. And that's why they call it the woolly neck. And I'm going to work on these legs a little bit more. I'm just getting the basic color on this. Now its toenails you can leave. They'll probably be like a grayish color. Grayish yellow color. I'm just going to leave them plain. I'm not going to put any color in those. And now I'm going to take a darker red to, I just want the bill to look round, and so this is just the shadowing, that's not the actual color of it, of the beak. But I think just this little detail will make it look, I have to turn the paper a little bit. Here's a little bit of the darker red along where the beak opens and underneath. And just that little detail, I think it made it look quite a bit more realistic. And that's the kind of artist I am. I try to be realistic. And then right underneath his little pants, and then underneath his body, there's a shadow there. And then on either side of his leg coming down, I'll use that darker red to show that this is not a flat leg, that it's a round leg. And those are some of the kind of devices that you can use to give a little bit of realism to your drawings. And probably when I do my drawings, it takes so long to do them because I'm always trying to make it more look realistic, or adding a little detail here and there. And then I'm going to do something that's, well, it might seem a little odd to you. I'm just going to get lots of water on my brush, and I'm just going to take that water and just go down the front of it where the sun would be hitting and make it a little bit lighter. It's almost turning pink there. So who would think in a painting you'd use water? But it's true, it really works out well. And I'm going to use it on some of these feathers, like where it might be really shiny right there. I'm going to use the water. And I could even take a little piece of this paper towel and blot it and get it even lighter. And I'm not even using any white. And maybe some of these feathers would have a little bit of a shine mark on them. So I'm using the water and blotting it. And perhaps on his legs to make that, I'll put a little highlight on that. I'm blending and then using this as a blotter. And that looks like it's even rounder. There'll be a big one on this joint of his leg. And coming down here, using water. And I have to tell you that I really didn't start painting until I was in my 20s. I found it very hard to control watercolor, so I stuck with pencils. And we didn't really have very many of the beautiful markers that we have now when I was little. So I loved my pencils. So this would be a technique that you'd use with watercolors, but would be a little bit harder to use it if you're using watercolors. But you could always take a white and do it. As a matter of fact, I'll put a little white as highlights. This is white gouache, which is a watercolor, but it's opaque, which means you can't see through it. And I might use it to accentuate this little sparkle in his eye. I could use it to put a little white right there to show that it's shiny. And let's see, with this joint right there where it has like a little groove, and perhaps a little white right here where the sun is hitting it. And you know, I might just go and define some of these feathers with the white and show where the shaft of the feather goes down. It's just about done. And then, of course, the artist always needs to sign their work. Oh, that stork is starting to look like a stork. So I'm going to use my marker here and just outline him. I wouldn't really do this for my books, but I think in the case of this how to draw picture, it would be a good way to finish it. Oh, I almost forgot the bird book. I didn't even see this when I was looking at the storks today. They said there's a little black line through his eye of black feathers. Showing those longer feathers, his little pants, and his legs, and he has a little line there where the joint moves back. His toenails. And I think he's just about done now. So, and as I was saying, the artist always needs to sign their work. So I think a good out-of-the-way place might be down here. So I'll put Jan, Brett. My stork is all finished. Here it is. And good luck drawing your stork.